Hello, Mother. Hello, Father. I hope that you are doing well. It's been quite some time since we last talked, and I miss you both dearly. You're probably wondering why I'm calling you so suddenly out of the blue. But don't worry. You'll find out soon enough because I am coming. I hung up the phone and turned to my wife, who was visibly distressed. I, on the other hand, was understandably upset by the voicemail from our daughter. One might wonder what would fill parents with disgust and hatred towards their own child. After all, is it not a parent's job to love and care for their progeny? My wife and I loved our daughter, Clarissa, with every ounce of our heart and soul ever since she was born. And as a little girl, her blonde hair shone like the sun in the daylight and even brightened up the dark of the night. She was outgoing and very inquisitive, always able to grasp concepts that would be deemed too complex for children her age. We were proud as can be of our little genius, and all the praise that she received from teachers and tutors filled us with joy. But our little girl, our precious and beautiful girl, would no longer resemble her former self after an unfortunate incident. At the age of 12, Clarissa began to behave strangely, like her mind was slowly being warped and twisted by some unseen and arcane force that acted behind the scenes. It all began one day when I was mowing the lawn and she was sitting outside in the grass fiddling around with some of her toys, or what I thought were her toys. When I had finished half the lawn, I turned off the mower to go over and tell her to move so that I could finish up. As I approached her, she panicked and used her hands to quickly cover whatever it is she was toying with. Curious, I inspected the area around her and saw that there were specks of red in the grass and a butter knife off to the side of her. I assertively told her to move her hands and show me what she was attempting to hide. She relented after I threatened to spank her, something I had not done up until this point. Clarissa lifted up her arms, blood dripping down her arms, leaving dark red trails flowing down her forearms. And on the ground was a mutilated blue jay, breathing weakly as its wings twitched in pain from the cuts on them. I chastised my daughter and ushered her inside, telling her to take a shower and that we would talk once she was done. While she was doing that, I called my wife, who was gobsmacked that our daughter was even capable of such cruelty towards such a wonderful creature. When we were all gathered together, my wife and I tried to explain to our daughter that using violence towards anyone or anything was wrong, that what we needed to do was respect others and to be gentle. Of course, we explained that sometimes you may need to defend yourself from mean people, but we should never put them in a state similar to what she had done to the bird. We said this and more to Clarissa, but to little effect. She just looked at us across the dining room table, bewildered by our words, completely unable to process what we had just told her. She cocked her head and was clearly trying to reconcile her actions with our words. My wife then, rather apprehensively, asked Clarissa if she understood what we were trying to tell her. Clarissa opened her mouth to speak, but fell silent and looked down at the table, shaking her head. I then more firmly told her that her actions were wrong and that she had better never do something like that ever again, especially not to people. Clarissa apparently disliked my tone and what I had told her, so she responded with something that filled my wife and me with an archaic primal fear. There's nothing wrong with what I did. It was the bird's fault. She said this as her once youthful and dainty eyes looked at us with the eyes of a hardened killer, cold and lifeless. Clarissa found nothing wrong with her actions, and no matter how long we tried to tell her otherwise, the immorality of her actions eluded her. Seeing that we couldn't get through to her, we decided to take her to the doctor to see if she could be diagnosed with some kind of mental disorder. Our doctor ran some tests, asked Clarissa some questions, and he consulted some experts. After an uneasy week, we finally got the results of Clarissa's condition. He explained that it was just the darndest thing. After numerous brain scans and extensive questioning, her mind and brain were as healthy as could be. but she did show some signs of an underlying problem, so we could get her some medication to see if that could help as well. We were flabbergasted that our daughter had been diagnosed with nothing, but we had hope that we could bring her back to normalcy despite the confusing revelation. So, after the whole ordeal of getting Clarissa into therapy sessions and antipsychotic medication, she started to show some promise. More and more often, that bright sunspot of pure love and kindness would shine through that icy personality of hers. And after almost a year, it seemed like our daughter had returned to us, and we could not have been happier. Only, it was all a ruse, one that was carefully calculated and planned by our daughter. My wife found months' worth of pills hidden behind our daughter's dresser in her room when she was moving furniture around. I was across the hall when my wife made this startling discovery and quickly showed me. I yelled for our daughter to come to her room, but she didn't come. So my wife and I made our way through the house and found her sitting at the kitchen table with my pistol in her hands. She immediately raised it, pointed it at us, and told us to sit down. We complied and then tried to tell our daughter to relax and to give us the gun. She denied our requests and explained that she would do no such thing. She said that she was tired of pretending, denying who she was, and that the dreamer was telling her that we were trying to kill her, and that the only way for her to free us was to kill us. We pleaded for our daughter to listen to reason, but she ignored us. She pointed the gun directly at my head and pulled the trigger. Click. She'd forgotten to take off the safety. I then lunged across the table as she flicked the safety off and fired, grazing my neck. I then reflexively wrestled the gun from her and shot her between the eyes, killing her. In disbelief, I dropped the gun and my wife grabbed onto me, freaking out, crying that our daughter was dead. I grabbed my wife's face and told her to listen to me. I told her that our daughter was clearly lost, deranged, and without a doubt tainted by an evil that we couldn't understand. My wife eventually came around to my reasoning as she remembered the doctor saying that there was nothing wrong with our daughter. So, while it was a hard pill to swallow, we concluded that our daughter was an evil that needed to be disposed of. After that incident, we packed all of our things, disposed of the body, and ditched the country, and settled in a small town in northern Germany. We thought all was well until that phone call. Clarissa was coming to get revenge for what we did to her. Based on her voice over the phone, she had not aged a day at all since the day I murdered her. And to our dismay, we could hear Clarissa call out to the dreamer as she ended the call. Whatever or whoever the dreamer was, had to have been the one that converted our daughter to this incomprehensible darkness. My wife and I made the decision that we could not run and that we would face our daughter again and whoever her demonic mentor was. We sat in our living room with some holy water, salt, a baseball bat, and my old pistol. We sat in silence waiting for the arrival of our daughter. Hours went by before she and the dreamer made themselves known. We heard a knocking on our door and the voice of our daughter happily asking for us to let her in. My wife got up and quickly poured some salt and holy water near the entryway while I picked up the pistol and then waited. Again, we heard our daughter asking to be let in, faster and faster in a progressively deeper voice. Eventually, it all accumulated to the door being blown open and our daughter flying through the air at us. She was stopped by the line of salt and holy water my wife had set drawn and grumbled in pain as she looked at us, enraged. Her eyes were pitch black and green veins were visible all throughout her body. She screeched at us, trying to claw her way through our makeshift barrier. She taunted us, calling us murderers and that we were just jealous of her. Jealous that she'd been chosen by the dreamer. I yelled at her, telling her that she needed to die, that she had been corrupted by this unseen dreamer. My wife then pleaded for her daughter to just leave as she placed another salt circle around her and me. Clarissa stopped her screeching and stood up straight as a colossal, ethereal black tentacle mass squirmed its way into our home. We watched in terror as it shoved multiple tentacles into the back of our daughter as clicks emanated from her throat. The black fleshy mass raised her into the air and controlled our daughter's body like a puppet and spoke through her. "You have my thanks for bringing your daughter to my attention. She is an excellent addition to my collection." Its voice burned our brains, and while it wasn't speaking in English or in any human language for that matter, I could understand its blasphemous tongue. I screamed at the creature to give us our daughter back as I fired multiple bullets into its bulbous body, which did nothing but made it chuckle. My wife then flung some holy water at it, which seemed to burn its flesh, but not enough to force it to retreat. Seething with rage at seeing my daughter being used like a rag doll, I lunged forward with the baseball bat and slammed it down onto what I perceived to be its head. When the bat connected with the creature, it made an ugly squishing sound before ultimately absorbing the bat. I fearfully scampered back behind the lines of protection as the beast laughed at us. It then said that it had not faced a pair of humans so plucky as us in a long time and decided to leave us alone. For now, as it would be far more fun to draw out our deaths and prolong it until it grew bored. At which point it would ensure that our daughter would be able to slay us with her own ghostly hands. With that said, it then vanished into thin air with our daughter. My wife and I then sat back down onto the couch in a heavy silence. We'd been running from place to place since that day, trying to consult whoever we could to see if we could find anything on the dreamer and what could be done about it. But we haven't had any luck, and we fear we're running out of time, as sometimes we swear we can see tentacles disappearing out of sight around the corners and the laugh of our daughter in the distance at random moments. And that laughter gets closer every night.